I'm here with Dr. Scott Jeffrey, who is an expert on superheroes amongst other things, and you're going to talk us through some images today. So I'm going to move my camera around so we can see the image, but we'll get it set up that we can look at this. We'll just give them a quick look at what we're looking at. It's from Action Comics. So is that from a comic that was published in this country, or?
No, this is an American comic. So Action Comics are probably the most important superhero comic ever published. The first appearance of Superman, who was the very first comic book superhero. So the important pulp heroes had existed before. So people like Tarzan, Conan the Barbarian, for example, kind of Pulp Fiction paperbacks. But the comic book superhero, this is it. This is the very first.
So Conan makes his appearance in literature first before he is that?
Yes.
And that it's these kind of short stories, is he?
Yeah.
Or is he in that's The Hard? Forgotten the name.
Yeah, those kind of old sort of Pulp Fiction, like Weird Tales and Astonishing Stories, those kind of magazines, and so it was quite a thriving kind of pulp sci-fi scene in the 20s.
Now they have a lot of interest in cover art, but you could talk about that in another short video. But in this one, can you talk us a bit about, this is the first appearance of Superman.
Yes.
Superman's different. Why is he different?
Well, the key thing, I suppose, is he's the first guy who, I guess the first important thing is he's not a man, despite the name. He's an alien.
He's an alien.
So that's the first kind of big move. The other important thing about Superman is although you do have pulp heroes, they tended to be sort of anti-heroes, if you like. They were a little bit dark, they were a bit scary, they weren't shy of shooting people.
Can you give me an example?
If needs be. The Shadow, for example, Doc Savage, Man of Bronze, as he was called, a big influence on Superman. Superman
Do they all predate Superman?
Yes.
So Superman, he's an alien hero from outer space.
He is.
Right, and he's different from these guys because these are all human.
They're all human,
right.
and they're not as. There's a darker edge to them. You do get posthumans before you get, as we talked about, the sort of pulp books, but also you've got, prior to that, sort of H.G. Wells, early science fiction. So you've got elements of these kind of superhuman figures, if you like. But usually what happens is they either go mad or they have to be killed at the end of the story. So prior to Superman, effectively the superhuman is a threat, is a menace.
Well, he's on our side.
Yeah, whereas this is the first time someone is. Although even here, I think if you look at what's interesting about the cover, is that he's still a slightly terrifying figure.
He's picking up a car there. I don't know if we can see this, but he's picking up a car.
Yeah, so the other interesting thing about Superman, 1938, so the kind of, we're well into the 20th century by this point, but it's almost like we need the Man of Steel. He's the only person capable of dealing with the modern age.
And can I ask you about how he's portrayed and how he's been drawn, and has there been any changes? That's 1938, and we're here in 2014 as we draw this. Now, I know he's been appeared in films, but in terms of actual art, has he been drawn differently?
Not particularly, actually. I mean, the template is all there. The chess symbol, although that has changed slightly, it's a bit more of a sort of cartoony. The cape, the pants have disappeared in recent years.
About the pants,
which I think that's something of a pity, personally. But they've disappeared. But largely, the entire thing it's all set up in that comic. Nothing really has changed.
Is 1938 the first appearance of Superman?
Yes.
Okay. So if anyone's watching this, any of the art students watching this, they can go into Google Superman, hit images. And they'll see the evolution of drawing, but they should see the same basic form is there. He's
certainly costume-wise. What's interesting about Superman, it became sort of very codified. So even the kind of the curl at the front of his head, when Jack Kirby, who's probably the single most important artist in superhero comics, and he kind of in the 1960s. Co-created Iron Man, the Hulk, most of the Avengers, almost everyone at Marvel except Spider-Man, effectively. So what we think of as superheroes, we owe a big debt to Jack Kirby. But when at the end of the 60s Jack Kirby left Marvel for DC, And despite Jack Kirby having a very familiar style, and despite DC hiring him specifically because of that style, actually they made him draw Superman. They would change the heads.
Right.
So they would get another artist to come in and redraw Jack Kirby's Superman heads because they felt you needed the curl of the hair at the front, a particularly square jaw. That's not really disappeared. He did have a mullet for a while in the 90s, but every superhero did for a while in the 90s. That was a thing. But other than that, I mean, it's kind of remarkable, I think, that template has remained pretty much the same.
That'd be of interest to us. Thank you very much for that.
No problem.